to creating a more loving world. So thank you for being here and being a source of light for the world. We're really happy tonight to have with us the people actually who brought us to where we are. We'll be talking about that. 30 years ago, they got us on the path that we're on now. So it's Karen Anderson and Barry Snyder, who are spiritual teachers and just amazing, amazing beings. So as an introduction to Karen and Barry, we'll forever be grateful. It always makes me kind of weepy because I'm so grateful to them for the path that they have led us on. We've been following it for more than 3 decades now, and we'll be discussing actually some of the highlights of their teachings and how this happened for us and so many others over the years, along with just amazing technologies, spiritual technologies, and I'm not even sure all the things they're doing right now. But I'm so happy that they're here with us. And I wanted to share a quote from their website because I thought it was very interesting. The two of us have become resurrection specialists through decades of working with our own challenges and those of others. We've learned that anything and everything can be resurrected if we're able to meet it with an open heart and surrender to the divine mystery. Beautiful. So, Karen and Barry, I hope that you'll just start us off. We're going to be talking about the importance of connecting with your true identity, and just start off by telling us a little more about yourselves and why this topic is so important to you.
Well, it's been the story of our last 40 years of our life, really. It's both going through an awakening process in the 30s and coming to the realization that inside of each one of us, you call it the soul, some people call it the self, whatever it is, but there is within inside of us an aspect of the divine. A metaphor we like to use is that we're a drop in the ocean of God, the ocean of God in the drop of our being. That's really our true eternal nature. The whole purpose of the human experience is to realize that, is to come to experience, commune with that, and embody our true nature as a soul. And that's what we've done with 30 people, for 30 years with people. We simply assist them to make the inner journey to have a direct conscious communion with who and what they really are. And that necessarily means going through all the things that we are not, that
right.
we are attached and identified to. Some people call it the false self, the ego. But that's the whole dynamic. That's all that we do with people, is assist them to make that journey, to learn how to make that journey. We liken ourselves to training wheels. We just walk beside people and help them gain the inner capacities, know how to make that connection. What do I do when all of a sudden I'm seized with an overwhelming emotion or an external crisis that throws me out of balance? And how can that be the next step in my journey? Because what we've come to understand is that once we consecrate the purpose of our existence, why we're here, to realizing who we are and turn it over to the source of our being, which call it God, the source, or whatever it is, it does itself. In other words, the divine is always waiting to bring us home to who we are. The reason that doesn't happen for most of us is that we still think we're running the show. Our hands are still gripping the steering wheel, thinking we're guiding this thing. So God, the divine, our higher self, just stands back and says, it's fine. I love you. I honor your free will. You get to drive the bus as long as you want. And the great realization is when we realize it makes us take the big leap on our path was we don't have to do this. As a matter of fact, we don't know how to do this. If we knew how to do it, we'd already be there. We'd already be in the constant state of love, joy, happiness, everything. But we aren't.
Mm-hmm.
We're suffering. Most people are suffering to one degree or another. And that big step of realizing that we can surrender ourselves completely to the source of our being, the ocean at which we are a drop of, and it wants nothing more than to take us home as quickly and easily possible to realizing who we are. And that's the essence of how we work with people.
Right.
Let them realize that once they do that, the journey is on, and no matter what is happening to them, arising from within or coming into their outer life, is that journey. So there's no opposition to anything. Everything is brought there by God. If you
Right.
truly surrender to that, God says, okay, I'm going to bring you home. And whatever is there is the next step. Karen has a beautiful saying. She said, the stuff is not in the way, it is the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed also there was a place on your website where you mentioned embracing life's challenges as a key to awakening too. I think that is an integral part about it, is reframing the way that we perceive the journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's enormous, Jane. It's one of the biggest steps we see people make, because the natural inclination when we have a difficult emotion come up or we get conflicted is to think something's wrong.
I'm not doing this right. I should be doing this different.
Mm-hmm.
I should be different.
Yeah, something's wrong with me. I think that is the essence of the illusion.
Picture.
Right? Or something's wrong with this life I'm living. I'm not doing it right. And so if we can see our way through that, if we can let go of those judgments, those thoughts, those ways of looking at it that are completely creating suffering, then we can recognize that every one of these things is a doorway. And if we stand in the doorway and just be with it and meet it with everything we have, if we can breathe into it, we can feel what the feelings are that are there, if we can identify the thoughts and the punishing judgments and the harsh concepts that we're agreeing with that none of which are true, then if we turn it all over to God and God within, which is the same thing as the soul or the true self, we are taken on a journey that is just perfect for where God is trying to bring us next. And so we've learned in our work together to just trust that implicitly beyond anything our minds could ever come up with. Anything we could ever mock up.
We should try early on when we work with people 30 years ago. We had all these conceptual ideas of where they were and, psychologically and things and what the next process should be. Every time we tried, I just fell flat in the face. We just had to surrender to the mystery and let the divine show them exactly, lead them step by step through the process. And the whole process we talk about a resurrection is realizing the divine is infinitely wise, powerful, and loving, and it cannot fail.
Right.
We know that. We've seen it through 30 years of walking beside people through the most horrendously difficult things you can imagine. Things no person can get through this. But we've never seen anything that can't be resurrected. It just, if you can keep surrendering it and being with the process, you are led through it every time. This is magnificent. Because what was there was what was in the way of you experiencing the magnificence of the divinity that you are.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's an interesting part of the illusion that, and this is something I didn't really fully understand myself for a while, quite a while. I can't remember how many years ago it was now, but there's this sense of being separate from God. And then at a certain point, I realized that is all just the illusion too. We're separate from God because we believe we're separate from God. If we don't believe we're separate from God, then we're not. It's all connectedness. It's just that we're not there.
I wanted to share a thought, feeling, and kind of turn it over to you, Barry and Karen, have your thoughts on it, is that God's source loves us enough to let us forget about God while we're here on earth and do a lot of screwy things and have all kinds of seemingly terrible, tragic things, painful things happen to us, to maybe awaken in this lifetime or not, to going back to where you were eloquently describing at the beginning of surrendering and being one with God. So sort of the comment question leading into you. So on the other side, where we're connected more directly with source when we're not in human body, we come back here and we forget. So the idea is like, wow, we go back to the other side without the veil and things make sense, but we're still working on things. We're still growing and being a piece of God, that piece growing. So I'm just kind of wondering your thoughts about that. That's not quite a direct question. It's more of a thought.
What
perception.
is the question you have, Philip?
So the question would be, is this idea of forgetting that on the other side, we who are struggling here under pain and tragedy and forgetting and not trusting the source, and where, your wonderful work is opening them up to, opening us all up to, the idea that we have forgotten kind of who we are, but on the other side, we do know who we are. So we come here in a state of forgetting, that William Wordsworth, life is but a forgetting. We come from a distant star in trails of glory.
The question, that's what goes on. As soon as you incarnate, there's a veil. There's a veil.
Forgetting pill. Amnesia pill.
You
swallow it when you're born.
People who have literally regressed back to prior to coming in, where they're standing and remembering, knowing who they are. And then the minute they come in and the cord attaches to the womb and they descend, boom, lights out. It's just the way it is here. And we could talk a long time. I think that's not
the way it is.
Right.
But I think that's the biggest challenge about being here. I think that the whole long stream of human evolution is about this.
Yeah.
That we come here over and over and over
Right.
again as souls, taking on a new body each time. And each time, if it's going well, if we're in touch with our soul a little bit more in each lifetime, we're living more from that divinity that we are.
a little bit.
Until finally, the sense I get is that we reach a point where we no longer need to come in and inhabit a body. We no longer need to take incarnation, because we've woken up enough that we remember now that it always struck me, it's like that old thing that we used to do as kids, where you would try to pat your head and rub your belly in a circle. And it's really hard to do both of those things at the same time. It's a lot like that when we look out at the world and we see that everybody is inhabiting a separate form, right? You're in that form over there and you're in that form.
So it appears.
And we all seem to be so separate and so distinct and so non-connected with each other. And yet the real truth is obviously that we all know, and that we're all living into, is we are all part of one great being.
Mm-hmm.
It's as they say in one spiritual tradition, you are another me. I am another you. And so it seems to me that's the goal of human life, is to reach that point where, okay, I've got it. I've got it enough now. I'm solid enough in it that I no longer need to come back down there and do what you're talking about, Philip, with going through the suffering and the traumas, all of which stem from that forgetting. Mental
Right.
forgetting.
Right.
All one being.
And the waking up happens when we make that inner journey, as we peel one layer of forgetting off after another, and we experience more of our true essential nature. The obvious truth that we are not what we see in the mirror alone, that we are something so far beyond that, something that exists beyond any incarnation, that is everything that we're seeking. That's it. That's the flowering. That's the end of this long journey where the soul is in incarnation. It comes to this flowering.
Right.
That is the awakening that, the great ones have all shown us what
what that looks
what
like.
that looks like.
Right.
That's where we're all going.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, thinking of our journey, Philip and me. We were involved with spiritual development for many, many years before we met you. And we spent about a decade in a spiritual organization where the leader had all the truth and wisdom, and everybody, was followed the leader, which still is very prevalent even in spiritual circles, interestingly. And we finally decided, well, if he has all this truth and wisdom, why can't we have it? And we left. And that was
need to be there. Exactly.
right. And the thing is, then we were searching for that truth and wisdom within ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's still from that point, the point when we left there to the time when we met you was 4 years. And that's the gift that we got from you. One of them. It was not the only thing. We learned so much. But the gift of being able to connect with that divine truth and wisdom, and actually understanding, from within ourselves, we could start to see the beauty and the magnificence within ourselves.
Yeah.
That was something. That's the thing that I can't possibly ever thank you enough for, because and it's interesting because it's not as hard as people would think. And I think it's just so direct, and that I think it's being very direct about it that actually makes it work. Because we went to lots of classes and intuitive things, and it's like, oh, you think about the light and then this, and then the truth, and it just never worked for us. And then we learned from you. And I wonder if you would want to touch a little bit on what that is what I would consider to be the foundation for advancing and being able to overcome all those burdens.
It's
There's
so much we could say about
it's that. A direct experience. It's like living in the egoic world of third dimensional consciousness. It's like living in flatland. Let's use this little simple metaphor. It's like living in flatland. When you connect with this, you're expanding another whole dimension of being.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I explain to somebody in flatland what a sphere is. If they you see a little dot and circles and a dot, and that's it. But to tell them what a sphere is, they'll never understand that. When you experience this, like you say, it seems impossible, incomprehensible, whatever. But once you experience it, and you know what's there, something so profoundly changes in your sense of who and what you really are.
Right.
And the capacity that you have, all of a sudden, there's insight, there's knowing. You just know things about things. You're no longer caught in your head worrying and thinking. You sit down, you get quiet, boom, you see it, you understand it. It's direct insight. You get the whole gestalt of a problem immediately. You know exactly, there's this challenge that comes up. Well, we could do this, we could do that. Look at all these different things, all these ideas. And you sit down, you go inside and go, God, show me, soul, show me what it is. You get immediately this feeling, that's the door. I know it, and I know it's right. It's just a whole other dimension of being that is not accessible to us when we're in, the human identified, solely human identified state of being. But once we take that next step and make that inward journey and have that conscious communion, feel that presence within us, that's it. That's everything. That's the goal of what we hope for people and do with people.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think you've been pointing to this area,
Right.
talking about it, and that's it where it is. It's really, and it's interesting. The heart is it's at the center of our being, and having, with all the years we've been doing this, we recognize even more and more clearly now, always, how true it is that everything is connected and everything has meaning. And I think when you really look into the heart, it becomes pretty obvious what the meaning is, and how profound the wisdom is that comes from there when you open to the truth that exists.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You go. That's it.
Yeah.
I understand.
That was a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And when we learned that process, which I think you're going to do with us today, right, in the here in the circle, when we learned that process, I was working as an architect, and I felt like my soul was dying. My energy was really low. My life force, my desire to go, to continue on was dubious. I knew something big had to change. And when we learned this process, I started doing it every morning. And I think within a week, I was in a completely different place. I couldn't wait to get up in the morning. I had to make that extra 15, 20 minutes, to sit and do the process. But I've never, in all these years, I've never gone back where I was before. I can't wait to get up in the morning. I still connect with that truth in me, and it's easier. Obviously, it's much easier now, and clearer, and it goes deeper, to really, I think, to me, a more direct communion with God. I felt at a certain point, God started talking to me, and it was kind of like, who is that? But it is, to me, the most amazing of all things.
Yeah, to us too. It's our favorite thing about everything that we share with people. It's just helping people to get in touch with that sacred space where the light of the divine is shining in them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why our website is called Luminous Self. It's all about getting in touch with the fact that, yes, we are luminous. We are not those dark, shrouded beings that we so often go through life thinking that we are.
Mm-hmm.
We are something so much vaster and more multidimensional and something eternal. And that's what's living at our core in our heart of hearts.
Right.
So we love nothing more than to help people connect with that. And as that happens, then all the gifts begin to manifest, that sense of love for themselves and for everyone else, a sense of unity rather than separateness, and definitely the feeling that I know what I need to know when I need to know it. It will come to me. It is coming to me.
Yeah.
I can trust that.
Mm-hmm.
No longer deciding from up here in that binary world of the mind, it's either this or it's that. It's either good or bad, up or down. We're living more and more from the unity of that soul space, that space within us where the divine does live and does shine out. And as we begin to open to that more and more deeply, everybody around us begins to shift too. That's another thing that happens. And people begin to see that their family interactions are changing.
Yeah.
Their special or their close relationships are changing at work and in their families and in their lives in general. Everything begins to resonate more from that space of the soul, less from the space of the mind or the separate self.
Yeah. The outer reality is nothing more than a holographic projection of our inner state. That's why people why do I keep creating this terrible relationship?
Right.
But when this is open, and you alluded to this, Jane, I think it's really important. Anatomically speaking, in our subtle anatomy, just above our heart, physical heart and heart chakra, right here, right about there, a couple inches above our heart.
Yeah, you can feel it. It's a tender spot, I think.
Will you put your hands to pray? Okay? This is why people do that, because we intuitively know that something is in there. This is the altar of our being. This is where the temple is, where God resides in us. And so part of what we'll do, it's as simple as this: if we can bring our consciousness or awareness to this place, out of here, we had a great teacher who said, out of the office and into the cathedral.
Oh, that's great. I like that. I'll have to write that down.
Drop down into the cathedral and simply, a very simple process we can do daily is just to bring our awareness there, to come into our breath, use that as the bridge from our thinking mind and our outer awareness to our inner world, and then bring that breath, all that breath, down to this place above our heart, and just reside there. Let our sense of being reside there. And that alone, if we did that over a period of time, this soul, it's called the soul lotus. It, like as a flower in there that's closed, it just opens. It slowly opens and slowly opens. And when we have the intention, this is the real great power is our intention and our desire to connect. The greater the intention and the greater the desire to connect, it just accelerates the process. It just, you were ready, Jane. You were
exactly.
You were burnt out with the way it was going. You knew something more. And that's what we're seeing now. People everywhere are leaving their jobs.
Right.
Yeah, burnout.
Right.
Wanting to do something different. They know there's more than this. This is not, this sort of dullness, deadness is not who I am, not the way life should be. There's something more. That's the sign of the collective awakening we're in right now. That's, to me, it. When you're ready and you feel that desire and you have an intention, the doors just open. And then especially when you turn the whole process over to God or the source. Say, it's all yours, lead me home.
This is your life.
Yeah.
You know what is best for me. You know what you are wanting to unfold through me. You know much more about that than I do.
And the path there.
And you know how to get there from here.
Yeah.
I do not. I don't have a clue.
Right.
What we do in sessions, when people come with a big dilemma, which is often the case, we really turn it all over to God and say,
so
I don't have a clue how to get through this, and it's okay. I'm not supposed to have a clue. I don't need to know. I will, if I can turn this all over and know that the divine has way more intelligence, way more wisdom, way more of everything than I can access at this point, then I know I'm in the best hands of all. And why would I want to be taking the steering wheel when I can give that steering wheel over to the infinity of what we call God, the one, the source. There are so many names for it in different traditions. It doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is that we know that if we give everything over to that will live through us. To the degree we surrender our little lives to that, that is what will come through us.
Yeah.
And then miracles happen.
Yeah.
Then unbelievable things unfold,
Yeah,
as you know.
Right.
Plenty of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys see people having sort of a life purpose or life plan unfolding?
Yeah, and that's, Phil, thank you for bringing that up. That's one of the reasons, we said the soul is one-stop shopping. It's like, whatever it is, the soul's the answer.
Right.
I want to find my life purpose. And they read this in books and search, and that's fine. That's fine. What we always say is, well, it's waiting inside of you for you to get in touch with it. But it can't come forth until you are in touch with who you really are. Because it's going to unfold. It's not out there. It's going to unfold from within you.
Like that.
Right.
And it does. And they don't even know what it is until they're in it. I mean, it literally, they come back and they go, well, I'm doing this whole new thing. It just happened. Boom. And their purpose for being like happened to you guys. It just all of a sudden, boom, you found yourself with this body of work.
You find yourself drawn towards something.
Right. Yeah.
You can even say why. You don't really have an intellectual sense of it or understanding of it, but you just know that you're drawn toward it. And when you move in that direction, more interesting things start unfolding. And that connects you with this other whole bridge to a different level of the path. And everything just happens if we can learn to turn it all over to that place in us that knows. So that we're no longer making decisions. We're no longer evaluating options. We're just that one true thing that the soul is always putting out for us to pay attention to.
Yeah, it is also, it's interesting. I realized at a certain point too, it is the thing that makes us feel the most alive.
Yeah.
It is like as I mentioned, my soul felt like it was dying. And at that point, I had no idea what that meant. Soul feels like it's dying. I mean, it wasn't a religious thing or any, it just was, that was what I felt.
Yeah.
And this is your purpose is the thing that makes your soul come alive, or your soul makes your purpose come alive, or they come together. And I look at aliveness as one of the greatest measurements of whether a person is on the on the path, firmly on the path, or if they're deviating off. Because when you feel alive and it's all working, and I shouldn't say it's all working, because things don't necessarily all work, because we have challenges. But if you're feeling alive and it just feels like the right direction, then it is, to me.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because the thymus is right here too, the thymus gland, and that is our source of aliveness, which is it's all right here.
One thing.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
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 Yeah.